I don't remember the cold. I remember the smell. Before they even opened the doors of that cattle car, where 80 of us were squeezed for 4 days without water, without light, and without dignity. The smell seeped through the cracks of the rotting wood. It wasn't the smell of ordinary death, the kind you see at funerals or hospitals. It wasn't the smell of war, of gunpowder and dry blood. It was a smell, sweet, greasy, like burnt meat mixed with something chemical, metallic, that stuck to the back of your throat and coated your tongue with a taste of ash. Someone in the back of the wagon, a man holding his fainting wife, whispered, "They are burning garbage. It must be a factory." We wanted to believe him. God, how we wanted to. But garbage doesn't smell like that. We would discover 30 minutes later that that smell was us. The doors opened. Light, blinding, white, painful. And the sound was hell itself. Raus! Schnell! Raus! Alle! Raus! German shepherds barking like beasts, pulling at the leashes of SS soldiers who looked impeccable. Ironed uniforms, boots shining so bright they reflected our fear, while we were human rags, covered in vomit, urine, and the sweat of 4 days of terror. I stepped onto the ramp at Birkenau. The ground wasn't solid earth. It was gray, sticky mud. And if you looked closely, the mud was moving. It was lice. Millions of them covering the ground, waiting for new hosts. This was never told in official history. The earth at Auschwitz seemed alive. It was there, on the ramp of death, that I saw the scene history books try to soften with cold statistics. The selection. There was no trial. There were no questions about who you were, what you studied, or who you loved. There was only a doctor. He was calm. He was whistling an opera, Wagner perhaps, or Mozart. The melody was light, contrasting with the screams all around. He moved his finger with the lightness of a conductor leading a macabre symphony. Left, right, left, left. Left meant the immediate end. Children, the elderly, pregnant women, anyone who looked weak. Their destination was the chimney spitting fire on the horizon. Right meant slave labor. It meant dying slowly. My mother grabbed my arm. Her fingers dug into my skin with such force they left purple marks. She knew. Mothers always know. A soldier pulled her away. I tried to hold on. I screamed, "Mother!" But the butt of a rifle slammed into my ribs. The sound of bone cracking was drowned out by the barking. The air left my lungs. I fell into the living mud. When I got up, coughing blood, she was already in the line to the left. She looked back one last time. She didn't cry. Her face was empty. She was taken towards trucks that said Red Cross, a cruel lie to keep the cattle calm until the slaughterhouse. I was pushed to the right, and at that exact moment, the young man I was died. I ceased to be human. I became a piece of inventory for the Reich. They didn't just take our clothes, they took our skin. We were taken to the sauna. They shaved our hair, all the hair on our bodies. Without hair, without clothes, all thin and dirty. We looked identical. You looked to the side and didn't recognize your neighbor, your brother. We were clones of misery. And then, the needle. The tattoo didn't hurt as much as the humiliation. It was done fast, without hygiene. The blue ink entered the skin, marking the property. A7713. The officer who did my tattoo didn't even look at my face. He was chatting with a colleague about dinner while marking my flesh forever. From that day on, if someone shouted my baptismal name, I wasn't supposed to answer. I was 7713. Answering by name was an act of rebellion, and rebellion meant death. Did you know this? That in Auschwitz, having a name was dangerous? Comment below if you could forget who you are to survive. I was assigned to work in Canada. It was the name prisoners gave to the warehouses where the belongings of the dead were sorted. To us, Canada symbolized a distant land of plenty. It was the most surreal and perverse place in Europe. Imagine mountains, literal mountains touching the ceiling of the barrack, of glasses. thousands of lenses that saw the world for the last time. Mountains of baby shoes, little red shoes, white ones, leather boots, suitcases with names written in chalk, full of hope. Hannah, 6 years old, pack winter coat. Dr. Levi, Vienna, medical instruments. They brought the best they had, thinking they would be resettled. There, in Canada, there was food hidden in the suitcases. There were jewels sewn into the linings of coats. It was the richest place on the continent, built with the loot from the death of millions. I held a blue silk dress that still had the scent of lavender perfume. The woman who owned that dress, 200 meters away, had already turned into the smoke I was breathing. The irony was brutal. We were surrounded by wealth, handling gold and silk, but we were skeletons covered in striped rags. Sometimes we found photos, wedding photos, beach vacations, birthdays. The SS guards forced us to tear up the photos. Garbage, they said. They wanted the gold, not the memories. Erasing memory was part of the extermination. If there are no photos, these people never existed. Life in the camp wasn't about living. It was about postponing death for one more hour. The routine was mathematically designed to break your mind before your body. We woke up at 4 in the morning. The appel, roll call, could last for hours in the freezing Polish cold, standing at attention, motionless. If someone collapsed from exhaustion, they were shot in the back of the neck right there. The body stayed on the ground as a warning. If someone moved to scratch a sore, they were pistol whipped. So we learned to sleep standing up. This is something few tell, the technique of sleeping standing up. We pressed ourselves against each other, forming a compact human block, like penguins in Antarctica. The heat of the bodies in the center kept the ones on the outside alive. We rotated positions without speaking a word. It was a silent and desperate solidarity. But the real enemy, worse than the cold, worse than the SS, was hunger, the water diet. In the ECO1 morning, coffee that was dirty, lukewarm water. At lunch, rotten turnip soup. Sometimes we found sawdust or sand mixed in to add volume and trick the stomach. At night, a piece of black bread, hard as a brick, made with flour and sawdust. Hunger, real hunger. It changes your brain chemistry. It turns off morality. I saw cultured men, loving fathers, fight to the death in the mud over a raw potato peel. I saw a son steal bread from his own dying father. Don't judge. You don't know what your animal instinct does when your body starts digesting itself, when your muscles atrophy and you feel your organs shrinking. And there were the Muselmann. That's what we called the living dead. You knew when a man turned into a Muselmann. The light disappeared from his eyes. The gaze became glazed, focused on nothing. They stopped cleaning the soup bowl with their finger. They stopped picking off lice. They stopped feeling cold. They became empty shells, walking slowly, tripping over their own feet, waiting for the end. Usually, a Muselmann lasted less than 48 hours. When you saw a Muselmann, you moved away, not out of disgust, but out of fear, because despair is contagious. Looking at them was looking at your own future. October 1944, the moment I feared most. The rumor ran through the barracks like a virus. Selection in the block. Mengele was coming, the angel of death, not on the train ramp, inside our dormitory. They needed to clear space for new transports coming from Hungary. We had to strip naked, rows of skeletons shivering in the freezing air. I tried to puff out my chest. I tried to look strong, useful. But how to hide that my ribs looked like blades under transparent skin? How to hide that my knees were the thickest part of my legs? The officer stopped in front of me. He wore immaculate white gloves. He looked at my legs. I had a sore on my shin caused by a wooden clog that hadn't healed for months. Pus and blood were oozing. If he saw the wound, crematorium. A sick prisoner is a useless prisoner. Seconds before, I used some dry mud from the floor to cover the red of the wound. A makeup of death. I prayed, not to God. God seemed to have forgotten Birkenau's zip code. I prayed to chance, to blind luck. He looked into my eyes. His look was bored. He didn't see a man. He saw a defective part in a factory that needed to meet quotas. He hesitated. His pencil hovered over the clipboard. My heart beat so hard against my ribs I thought he could hear it. Thump, 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 thump. Time stopped. The entire universe was reduced to the tip of that pencil. Waiter! Next. He moved on. I breathed, but the air felt like cutting glass. The man next to me, a music teacher from Warsaw who taught me songs at night, didn't have the same luck. His number was written down. That night the truck came. His bunk was empty. I took his blanket before the body went cold. Cold, practical, brutal. That was what I had become to survive. Liberation came in January 1945. The Russians arrived, but I never truly left there. Part of me is still in Barrack 11, shivering with cold, waiting for the next roll call. Part of me still tastes ash in my mouth. Today, people visit Auschwitz. They take selfies in front of the Arbeit macht frei gate. They see green grass growing where once there was only mud and blood. They hear birds singing. In my time, there were no birds. The smoke scared them away. Tourists don't smell the smell, but I do. Every day when I wake up. I tell this story not so you feel sorry for me. I don't want your pity. I tell it so you feel fear. Yes, fear. Because who built that? Who designed the gas chambers with engineering efficiency? Who operated the levers? Were not monsters from another planet. They were doctors, lawyers, engineers, fathers who loved their children and listened to classical music. Humans, like me, like you. The line between civilization and barbarism is much thinner than you imagine. It is a brittle layer of ice. It just takes the right leader, the right hate, the right propaganda, and the silence of good people. Look at my arm, A7713. This is not just a scar. It is a warning carved into the flesh of humanity. Don't let history become just a page in a school book that you memorize for a test. Feel it, understand it. Because history, it has a nasty habit of repeating itself when we close our eyes. If you made it this far and had the courage to hear what no one tells, subscribe to the channel, help keep this memory alive. And I ask you, if you were there in the selection line, would you have survived? Or would you have become a Muselmann? Comment below, I want to know your truth. On the screen, I'm leaving another video about the secrets of World War II that were hidden for decades. Click and continue discovering the truth. I am the chronicler of time, and I'll see you in the past. If you are fascinated by World War I history, military tactics, or just want to feel what it was like to be there, this story is for you.